Just for you, the listeners of Podcast Fandom, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial. Just go to audibletrial.com/podcastfandom. There are over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's audibletrial.com/podcastfandom for your free audiobook download. Hey guys, welcome to Podcast Fandom, the official podcast for ProjectFandom.com. I'm your host, Nina.
I am Megan.
And I am John.
And tonight we are talking about Game of Thrones, Season 4, Episode 1, Two Swords. Game of Thrones is back.
It is definitely back.
I know. It's back. I feel like we needed this because we were all sad to see The Walking Dead go last week. Mm-hmm. I'm so happy that the show is back. I'm going to lay out for our listeners who have probably spent the past few months listening to us talk about other shows. This is our first time covering Game of Thrones for Podcast Fandom. So just so you know, I am quote-unquote spoiled, I guess you could say, because I've read all the books. I needed to. I was a person who watched season 1 and loved it, but didn't understand what the fuck was going on. I needed to read the books. I am not that smart, apparently. So, and if you've read the books, you know, once you read one, you just can't stop. They're like Pringles. You just can't. So, or is that Lay's? I get my chips mixed up.
Once the head pops off, you can't stop.
Right. So, right. There's more beheadings to read about, so you got to keep going. But yeah, so I know, up until all the books, like what's going to happen. Yes, they've made some changes, so there's some stuff that I don't know, but and there's some stuff that I may not remember because I don't know if you heard, but those books are like 10,000 pages a piece. They're huge. So, and it's been like a year and a half since I've read them. So, but John and Megan have not read the books at all.
Yes, and I don't want to.
Right. She doesn't.
I've purchased all the books, but I'm just enjoying it so much, seeing it fresh on the screen that I think I'll probably read it when the whole series is over. I'll go back and devote some time.
So, and John hasn't either. And so to keep them unspoiled, what I'm going to do is we will do a spoiler section because I was thinking about it today. I want this podcast to be the type of podcast that people who just love the show and don't know anything about the books can enjoy, which will be the main part of our cast. But I also know as a book reader, I like listening to podcasts where even though the hosts, some of them may have been not spoiled, the ones that have read the books will do a section where they just talk about the changes, and that's so interesting to someone who's read the book. So I don't want you guys turning off the podcast, you book readers who care about my thoughts on the differences and the changes and things like that. So the spoiler section will go down after our outro music. If you have not read the books and you have no interest in knowing about the things that happen in the book, you can turn the podcast off then. And so if you have feedback that's specific to the books, please either email them to me personally. You can send them to nina@projectfandom.com. I already gave that email address out over Twitter earlier. Somebody wanted to talk book spoilers, and he asked me a question about that, which I will be covering in this spoiler section. But please do not talk about book spoilers in our podcast group, on our Facebook wall, on the posts, the recaps on our website, so that John and Megan can remain unspoiled. You can direct them specifically to me, and we can talk about them at length at the end of the podcast. Okay, so we have a lot to cover. We're going to jump into our overall thoughts. We're going to do a scene-by-scene recap. We have some iTunes reviews. We have some non-spoilery feedback to read. So let's get into it. Megan, what did you think of this episode?
I loved this opening episode. I thought it was amazing. We got some new characters, and the plot's like flowing along. I think for the first time, I am understanding everything that's going on, and I'm getting all the history. Like, I'm lining up the history in my head. Right, I'm like, oh, because this happened then when they invaded here.
Yeah,
got it. Like, so I thought it was great. I couldn't wait to get home and watch it again tonight.
John?
I loved it too, and I think one of the biggest things that I love about this series was put on full display in this episode, and that's that usually it takes from episode to episode, but I always find a new favorite character eventually, and it's like, Jon Snow shows up and I'm like, oh, it's Jon Snow's awesome now, but then it was all in this episode. In this episode, I kept going from character to character, like, oh, Tyrion's the best person on the show,
right?
And I was like, oh, Jaime's becoming the most interesting person,
yeah.
And it was like the whole thing, like, it keeps going until at the end, Arya is now I'm like, Arya's the best person on the show.
Yeah. Well, right,
there was no say that there was no scene that bored me at all. Right. I was into 100% every scene.
Well, that's the thing. This episode had the big task of, and I mean, they've done this in, their season openers in the past, the previous 3, where they do have a lot to set up, and they have to, it has the task of getting you back into where everyone was, catching you up, and then also setting the stage for where everyone's going to go forward. And there are a lot of characters, there are a lot of locations, so the season opener typically has a really hard job, and I think this one did it very, very well. And I think if you're a fan of the show and you know that it's based on this big sprawling series and that there are a lot of characters, you kind of expect that, and some episodes do it better than others, but I thought this episode did it particularly well. And I agree with you guys. I loved it. My expectations were actually kind of low, and I realized that I think it was part, riding the Walking Dead high that I was on from their season finale last Sunday. But as someone who's read the books and knowing what things are going to happen and knowing how they split season 3 covered the 3rd book and some of the 4th book, and what this, slightly some of the 4th book, and how this 4th season is now covering the end of book 3 and some of book 4, I was just like, they might fuck this up. So Nina, don't get your hopes up. Like, there may be some periods where it's just like, what the fuck is going on? So I had low expectations. I did not want to be disappointed. But I will say they totally surpassed my expectations. Even if they were super high, this would have blown them away because it was really good. Okay, so let's jump into the scene by scene recap. This episode begins, the first thing I want to point out is that some episodes, and I feel like, I think the series premiere did this. I don't know how many more did this, but this is a show that typically doesn't have like a cold open. Right. It's only done it a few times, and this one had one. So that was noticeably different right away. And it begins with Tywin Lannister as having this massive sword melted down and reforged into 2 smaller swords. And then he burns a wolf pelt in the fire. And while this is all going on, we can hear the instrumental tuned sounds of the Rains of Castamere playing. And then we get our opening music. When you guys watched the scene, did you realize what was going on? Like, what sword was being burned, melted down?
Yeah, I did. It's Ned's sword.
Mm-hmm.
Because they showed Ned in the previously on scenes, and he had the sword.
Yeah,
so that's his.
And it was the last thing they showed too. I noticed that they did that. Yeah, I was wondering how many people who hadn't read the books would understand what they were looking at. If they weren't paying attention to the previously on, but just in case, those were the last 2 things we saw. So we see that when he beheaded the deserter in the series premiere. He had that massive sword, Ice, and when he got beheaded in Baylor, adding insult to injury, they used his own sword to cut off his head. Now we see what became of that sword.
I started feeling like Ned was beheaded so long ago. It feels like it was forever ago. even longer than it has been. It feels like it was 10 years ago when Ned was beheaded.
This is interesting because unlike other shows we cover where the Walking Dead doesn't typically get very concrete with time, and so we always have to use visual clues when we watch that show, the weather, or if a character was pregnant and how far, to say, right. Oh, okay, it's been about this long. But this show is I feel like even worse because I just don't have any fucking clue how.
Right. It's almost like a biblical thing. It's like every day is like 100 days. You know, like you don't know.
Right, and their seasons last for decades, you know?
Yeah, I mean, winter has been coming for like 6 years.
Winter's been coming for a very long time, HBO.
Yeah, so that's it. But you're right. Even though we don't know, like, it could just be like 8 months in story time, but we don't know. It feels like 10 years.
Right. There's one point where Jaime Lannister says to Cersei that he's been back for weeks now. I'm like, really? I thought you just got back yesterday and got a haircut. Like,
yeah. So okay. So you.
But I love the scene with the sword. I love him melting it down and making 2 swords. I love that idea. And then later when he says, "Yeah, I made 2 because the other one was ridiculously big."
Yeah, absurdly large. Yes.
I was like, why would you need that sword? It's too big.
What I really liked about this opening was, besides the fact that it was visually beautiful. And that Charles Dance, I just love him, and I love Tywin and his evil self. And that's one thing I'll probably touch on a lot this season, is what I think makes the book so great is that he does a really good job of making you like bad characters. Like, you may not root for them, but they're enjoyable to watch and to study and try to understand why they do what they do. But anyway, so it was really good to look at. But I felt like it was, I read later that they had messed around with different possible openings. They had some that were action heavy, and they decided to go with this. And I'm so glad they did, because I feel like it kind of did what the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead did. I won't ruin it, but a major character died in the mid-season finale. And then when the season premiere picked up, there was a very, you guys know what I'm talking about, sad reminder of what happened, and it kind of sobers you and puts you back into that. So just in case you forgot how fucking horrible the situation is for the Starks, now you see this man burning down Ned's sword and having it reforged into 2 other ones, and then burning the wolf pelt that was the sword sheath. And to make it even worse, the Reigns of Castamere is playing. It's like, oh, fuck.
And when he gives the sword to, I'm going ahead a little bit, but when he gives the sword to Jaime, Jaime says, "Oh, you've always wanted one of these in the family." That really drives home the fact that this was a special sword.
Oh yeah, that sword was passed down from generations to Ned.
Yeah. I mean, and I felt like that was a really great line just to throw in there and to let people know, like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like oh, it's just a sword. Right. This is a big thing that the Starks have lost.
And Tywin's not going to offer up where it came from to other people. You know what I mean? Like, his pride is too much for him to say the only reason they have, because we should point out it's made with Valyrian steel. And it's not, that kingdom is no longer there, and it's not like a metal that's easy to come by. And so it's not like he's going to go around boasting that his son's Valyrian steel sword used to be Ned, belonged to a Stark. So it was like a fucked up thing to do, but it's private. Like, you know what I mean? It's his own personal satisfaction. But okay, so then, so we both really liked that scene. It took me a minute to realize that the other sword was smaller, like on purpose, because it's kind of. Have you guys ever made like waffles with a waffle iron, or and when you pour, the batter, and it has to like fill in every crevice, and sometimes you don't get enough, so you have to pour a little bit more to make it. I thought that's what was happening. I was like, oh, they need to pour more because the one on the right has to go all the way up. But no, it was he made 2, one bigger, one smaller. So then the next scene, let's talk about the opening with the music. So we got 2 new locations. Did you guys notice on the map?
I didn't actually.
Yeah, we did.
I was busy dancing around the room.
Yeah, I was waltzing, right? Yeah, with that music. Yeah. Oh.
And I was on a horse, but I remembered that it does evolve. I just didn't remember. Like, I couldn't notice what was new.
What was new? Okay, so the two new locations were the Dreadfort, which is where we didn't see it in this episode, and usually that's what they do. They show you locations you're going to see in the episode you're about to watch, and so we didn't see this, but I'm wondering if this one just sets up the season so you can see the places that are going to be important throughout the season. But the Dreadfort is where Theon is being held by the Bolton's bastard, and then we saw Marine. which is one of the last major. There's like 3 major slave cities that Daenerys is trying to conquer, and she's already got Astapor and Yunkai, so she's on her way to Meereen.
Most of Theon is being held there.
Right, yeah. There's some parts that are in Pike. There's one part in particular. So Tywin gives the sword to Jaime, who's decked out in his Kingsguard gear, and he tells like we said, he had someone come over from Volantis to forge the steel, and he tells him, "Yeah, I got it. He goes, where'd you get the Valyrian steel?" And he goes, "From someone who has no use of it anymore."
Yeah,
you fucker. So basically, the big conversation here is he wants Jaime to go back to Casterly Rock. He's like, you cannot serve on the Kingsguard and protect the king with one hand. He wants him to go back and take his place as the heir to Casterly Rock and settle down and get married and have some babies and carry on the Lannister name there, while he will stay at King's Landing and serve as Hand of the King. And Jaime is like, I don't want a wife. I don't want Casterly Rock. I don't want kids.
Wait.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, you already have kids. But
you have how many do you have? 3, 4?
But he tells him...
Yeah, but he doesn't want them.
Right, true.
Right, well,
But he tells him no. And so he says, well, fine, and he basically disowns him. He says, you can keep the sword because, a one-armed guy with no family, one-hand man with no family will need, every bit of help he can get or something like that. And Jaime walks out. So what did you guys think of that?
I love Jaime. Like, I feel like, and this is the kind of show where I'm going to start liking Jaime, and then he's going to go back to being an asshole. That's the kind of show it is. but right now, I think he's really great, and I think he and Jon Snow are very similar now, because they're both like, they've both been through some shit, and they're like, I don't take anything anymore. Like, I'm gonna say what I want, and then you're gonna still listen, and then I'm just gonna be. That's how it is.
That's exactly.
Go ahead, Megan.
I know, I was going to say that's exactly what I took from it, too. He was like, look, before he might have cowered under Tywin's, suggestion of doing anything as being his father, but now he's like, look, I'm back, and I don't want that. That's not about that life.
So that's interesting that you guys said that, because that was going to be my question. I did note that I found it funny that last season we saw Tyrion and Cersei just do what their father wanted. Like he was like, no, you're going to marry Sansa, you're going to marry Loras and put an end to these disgusting rumors about you. And that's all there is to it. And then they just have to fucking do it. So I thought this was a nice contrast, seeing this one son just be like, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I wondered, because we didn't really see a lot of Jaime with Tywin before this. I think they had one scene together when we first met Tywin, and he was cutting up that...
he's skinning the animal.
Stag, yeah. Which there was like foreshadowing, a Lannister carving up the stag that's on the Baratheon sigil or whatever. But we only had that one scene. So I was really I was wondering, like, is this a new thing, or is Jaime the one that can get away with shit because of how Tywin feels about him? So I don't know. I don't know.
I think this is, the fact that he disowned him would tell me that, he basically disowned him. It tells me that, this is at least a little bit new. This isn't like the same old Jaime that may have talked back before.
Yeah, I do think that there is, this isn't the first time he's done this, because the fact that Jaime was on the Kingsguard to begin with was a problem, and the Mad King did it on purpose because he was sick of people saying that Tywin was the real power behind the throne. So he purposely made Jaime the head of the Kingsguard because you can't get married and you can't have kids. And he did that because he wanted to keep him close. So he's thinking, okay, Tywin won't try any shit if his son is my, main bodyguard. But also, Tywin's legacy can't continue. He'll be forced to do it through the imp if he's my Kingsguard. And that was a big bone of contention between Jaime and his father then. So I don't know. But I just thought it was an interesting question.
I did want to mention, I think that Jaime's look, he's cleaned up, obviously, but he looks like he's less of a he wasn't a prince before, but he feels less like Prince Charming-ish. Like, really? His hair is less parted. Like, he's only got one hand, so he can't really take care of his hair. He can't really, yeah, he can't really do these kinds of things, and it feels like that kind of informs everything about him and how everything that has changed about him, and he puts on less of an air. It feels like when he walks around. Yeah,
I think when they first rode into Winterfell.
That's the first time
he was like, they're like, yeah, like
the second time we saw him. Go ahead.
He's the handsome one, you know.
Yeah. Who do you think got the second sword?
Oh, I didn't even think of it.
I'm sure I know from reading the books. I just don't remember. I'm honestly asking because I thought it was in. I was like, well, who the hell got the second smaller one?
I mean, I guess the obvious idea would be Tyrion. I mean, because smaller.
Yeah, or Joffrey, but I have a feeling he doesn't give a fuck about either one of them, really. Tywin. Okay, so the next scene is Tyrion, Bronn, and Podrick are on the road leading into King's Road, and they're waiting for the different families of Dorne who were invited to the capital to attend Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding. And as they're waiting, Tyrion does talk about the bad blood between the Martells and the Lannisters. And Bronn wonders, is that why they sent you? Just in case they feel like spilling some Lannister blood, it'll be yours? And Tyrion's like, no, I'm a known diplomat. Like, don't, So they're waiting there. And then the party finally arrives. And Tyrion learns that the Prince of Dorne did not come because his health is bad. But he sent his son. And his son has been in town already since the night before. So Tyrion and Bronn and Podrick have to go look for him before he gets into trouble. And they suspect, well, at least Tyrion suspects he's probably at a brothel.
Yeah, Tyrion's like, if you've banged half of Westeros, then where are you going to go? Come on.
And Bronn is like, I'm old. I'd probably just go to bed. He's like, you've been on the road for like 2 weeks and all this stuff. So in this scene, we learn a couple of things. We learn that Podrick really knows his house sigils of Dorne. Like, he was calling them out.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like that's what the kids learn. Like, that's, he just got out of, school or whatever. I don't know.
And then we learn that Bronn, he was like, which sigil is that? And Bronn goes, yellow balls? And then I did feel bad for Tyrion that, he introduces himself as, Tyrion Lannister, blah, 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 and he goes, Master of Coin, and it's like they have no regard for him. Like, Tyrion gets no respect.
No.
Okay, so then the next scene is at the brothel, and we meet Oberyn Martell and his paramour, Ilaria San, and they are in the process of picking out a girl for her. And then Oberyn propositions the procurer, not the house. If the woman is the madam, what would he be? The Mr. I don't know, but he's
a pimp.
He's a pimp. Yeah. So, but yeah, they're in one of Littlefinger's brothels, and they're picking out, this girl, and she picks one, and then Oberyn tells the guy, you're going to stay too, and basically they're about to have like a big old foursome.
Right.
Yeah. Until he hears one guy's voice from another room singing the Rains of Castamere. And he stops and he goes into the other room, and Ilaria tries to stop him, but she can't. So what were your first impressions?
Well, when the scene starts, I thought they were brother and sister. And I don't know why.
Maybe because he was picking out a whore for her.
Because that's a brotherly thing to do.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't expect, but
love.
I guess you wouldn't expect him to be picking out his girlfriend a whore. You know what I mean? So
that's better than what brothers normally do on this show.
I was so confused. Yeah, well, exactly.
True. But yeah, no, that's his paramour.
Yeah, my first impression with Oberyn was he seems very similar to Tyrion, and the conversation between them later makes me feel like he is similar to Tyrion. He's a little bit more brash and a little bit more angry and less intelligent, but he seems like they're very similar. Like they do talk about the fact that both of them are like the black sheep of the family and stuff
They're
like that.
the second
So,
son. Yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, I feel like that you're supposed to feel like they're similar at least.
And I also, there's definitely like a dark cloud over that motherfucker. Like something's going to happen.
Well, his name is the Red Viper, which I'm not sure if they mentioned when Tyrion was first talking about him. But I'm sure it will come up soon, and I won't even give the explanation for why that is. I'll let the show reveal that. But his name is the Red Viper, and I have to tell you, as a book reader, this is a big deal. Like there, you read them and there are characters that are coming, and this one was like, I cannot wait until they cast this role. And I have to tell you, as someone who's read the books, that I am so in love with this casting. The moment I saw his picture and I knew who it was going to be, I was like, yeah, I like the look of this. And I like the look of this actress as Aria. So I was happy with it. But seeing him move and be Oberyn, it was just like, perfect. So he goes into the next room, and probably, I'm sorry, I'm just going to fangirl. One of the hottest things he could have done was the way he just swipes his hand over this lit candle, like over the flame. And and I was just like, why did he do that? Like, and the only thing I can think of is he was trying to answer the question himself. Like, why am I so fucking hot? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know why you're so hot, but I'm here for it. I loved it. I just loved it.
I know why he's so hot, because he's got his freaking hand in a candle. That's why he's so hot.
Yes, and that's fine with me. That little simple thing, I don't know. I don't remember if that was done in the books. I don't know if that's canon or not, but I loved it. It just set him up so perfectly for me. But
do you think that was CGI? Or do you think they actually did that?
I think they actually did it.
Why
not? It doesn't hurt. That's not a big deal.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Well, now
I'm not sticking my hand in a candle. I'll do that.
Well, I will Google it at the end and see if there's anything on the internet about that. You two are not allowed to Google shit about Game of Thrones until the season is over, because I'm so scared you're going to get spoiled for all the great stuff that comes this season. So anyway, yeah, he approaches these two guys. They're Lannisters, singing the Lannister song, and they exchange words, and he ends up stabbing one of the guys through the wrist. And
in such a badass way.
Oh
too.
My God, yes.
Like, because he reaches for his sword, and it's like, bam, and a dagger through his hand, and it's like, a long sword is not good for close combat.
For close quarters.
Like, that's awesome.
I love when they said to him, when Aria comes into the room, and one of the Lannisters is like, what does someone from a Dornish need a woman for? Just get him a shaved sheep and a bottle of olive oil. And I do think that they have a reputation, also kind of like the Tyrells. I guess if you can't tell by now, like the Dornish are like olive skin. They do seem to have like this almost stereotypical kind of like hot-headed Latin lover. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah. So they do have this kind of reputation for being extremely passionate, hot-headed, sexual people. You see, he has no problem with having, a paramour who's female, and also fucking a guy if he feels like it. Like, they're very much more open sexually, and I feel like the Tyrells are that way as well, than the people in the capital city. So, yeah, so he stabs the guy in the wrist. Tyrion and Bronn come in, and he is like, yeah, we wanted to find you before there was any trouble, okay?
Welcome.
Yes. So the two Lannisters rush out, and Oberyn and Aria start kissing. Like, she's totally turned on by this act.
She was like, that was hot. Okay, that was hot.
Yes.
She's like, I saw what you did with that candle.
Yes. So he takes him outside. Oberyn and Tyrion go outside to speak in private, and we get Oberyn's story. Like John said, he can relate to Tyrion in a way because they're both second sons. And when Tyrion tries to say, oh yeah, Joffrey is so honored by your presence, he goes, no, he's offended. My father didn't come, and then he sent his second son. And we learn his story. His sister, Elia, was married to Rhaegar, and she, had his children, and he ran off. He said he left her for another woman. Prior to this, everything else we've heard says that Rhaegar kidnapped the Stark sister. So I found it really interesting that he said he ran off with her. But either way, that's what started like this big war to begin with, where Robert came into power. And when the Lannisters sat King's Landing for Robert, the mountain that rides raped and murdered Elia and her babies. And they wrapped the babies in Lannister cloaks and presented them to Robert. And I think that's part of there was that, after he helped him win the war, Ned went back up to Winterfell and hadn't seen Robert in a lot of years. And that was part of it. Like, he didn't agree with how the city was sacked and what they did to, the Targaryen wife and children. So that's Oberyn's story. You can see why Tyrion's nervous that he's in town. And Oberyn does say, tell your father I'm here. And also tell him Lannisters aren't the only one who repay their debts.
Oh, that scene played out masterfully.
And I loved it. Yeah. Up to that scene, I was not really digging Tyrion because, like you said last year, like he did do like what his father told him, and he seemed like he had been beaten down a little bit, and now and I feel like when this season started, like he was doing the thing, he was trying to do that thing, and so now when he's doing this, and it felt like he was trying to glad hand this guy, and then when they do go out and do this and have this scene together, I felt like the old Tyrion was there. Like, he's still that guy who doesn't really want to play the game, and he's smart enough to play it when he needs to.
Well, I disagree with you there about not wanting to play the game, because I think that was part of it. When Shae was like, we can go. When Tyrion did not get the recognition he thought he deserved for Blackwater, for being the reason that it went as well as it did up until the cavalry arrived. And she said, let's just go. And he was like, and do what? Like, he was like, God's help me. I love this game. He likes playing that game. I just think
I don't think that I don't think he wants to play like Tywin's game or Joffrey's game. I think he enjoys, the Game of Thrones. I mean, he enjoys like that, but it's more about he's an intellectual. He's less into being an ass about it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He definitely knows that this is like trouble, that this guy is here, and he's clearly, and rightfully so, not over the fact that his sister was raped and murdered and her children butchered.
Right.
And I don't think that he has real concern for Joffrey getting hurt, or even his father, or Cersei for that matter, but I do think that he understands that this can just be trouble. And the last thing they need right now, when they finally got this war died down for a bit, I mean, Stannis is still out there, but for all intents and purposes, the North has been squashed, and they're really not paying attention to Daenerys and her dragon. So for all intents and purposes, they got to start like building back the realm, and I just think that he thinks that, this can't be good. Like, this is not good.
I also like that. Was this the scene where was this also the scene where they were gonna get more girls to come in for them? Like, doesn't he say like, we're gonna need a couple more girls, and Tyrion's like, no, I'm married now.
Yeah, he goes, I don't partake. Yes.
I like that though. I was like, oh, that's different.
Yeah, I like when he says to Bronn too, like, who are you, his hired bodyguard or something? And he goes, I'm actually a knight. He said, I started that way, but now I'm a knight. And how'd that happen? I guess I killed enough people.
The right people.
And Martell, and Martell, like, Oberyn, like, kind of nods. Like, he respected that. He was like, okay, all right. So then we go across...
Tyrion saying, I'm married and I don't partake, I mean, that's him playing the game his way.
Yeah.
Like, that's him playing it and being like, I'm a married guy, I can't be, in a whorehouse now.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
So then we go across the sea to Daenerys, and she's sitting on this rock with Drogon next to her, and her other two dragons are flying around and fighting over something, and it drops in front of her, and we see it's a dead goat. And they start fighting over it, and then Drogon gets in the mix, and she tries, like, petting him and shushing him, and he turns on her and, like, growls at her, and she jumps back.
She may not burn, but she'll be eaten just as well as anybody else.
And she bleeds. She still bleeds.
And so Jorah approaches, and he stops for a moment. And before this happened, he was watching like the other two flying overhead and stuff. And he's looking. The look on his face was like, oh shit! Now I gotta go deal with this shit. Like, you could just tell he did not want to have to walk up on her with those dragons. Like, you see in his face that this is not a new thing, and he would prefer to not have to like go near her dragons to talk to her.
Or maybe his face was more like, I wish I was a dragon so she'd love me.
Right, and pet me like that. So,
I wouldn't bite her unless she wanted to.
And he tells her, he tells her that they're dragons and they can't be tamed even by their mother. So what did you make of Drogon kind of turning on her like that?
I don't know. I didn't really think too much of it other than like it's like a dog does that to you. Sometimes your dog kind of gives you a little bit of a hiss.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if your dog's eating, I mean, maybe that's
Right.
that's
Okay. So then we see that she's traveling with all her Unsullied. And I have to say, this scene when she's walking past her army with Missandei and Jorah and the other one, Selmy. And she's asking about where's Daario Naharis and Grey Worm, and he said that they're gambling. So she's walking past her army, and I have to say, I was like, holy fuck, that's a lot of Unsullied. Like, I know she got like 9,000, but for some reason,
But that's over 9,000.
Well, yeah, I was like, holy fuck. Because the other thing you have to remember is she didn't just free young Kai, she took those people with her.
Yes.
Like, so she's liberating these cities as she goes. And, Astapor was the first one where she got all of her Unsullied. And then the young Kai was the one at the end of last season. And then as she's walking, those people, they're like, Misa, Misa. She's taking them with her to Marine, which is the biggest, baddest slave city. And so they even talk about that, but we'll get that in a second. So I was just like, I don't know. I was just like, I don't know how smart this is to be traveling with these people. Like,
with a continent full of people.
Yeah, it was just insane. So Grey Worm and Daario, what they're actually doing is they're having some silly contests where they're each holding up their...
I'm sorry. That's kind of like the dragons, right? Because, I mean, like the dragons will bite you, and you think you can control them, and they'll bite you. And that's the kind of same thing with all these people that she's leading. Like, she thinks that she's in control of them, and maybe she's not as in control as she thinks.
Okay, it's hard because I read the book, so so it's like I don't, it just feels more like she has this compassionate heart where, like, if you remember in when she was looking at the people on the walk of punishment that were, hanging, they've been, they were like crucified basically, or I don't know what you call it, but they're like not crucified, but they were on those racks, and she offered one water and he wouldn't drink it. And then she was looking at when he was bartering with her, Krasinus, about giving her the Unsullied for a dragon, and she looked up at the little slave girl's face, and that's when she made up her mind. Yeah, I'll give you a dragon. But you knew she knew what she was going to do all along. I think that she has like this compassionate heart, but she doesn't necessarily think about the responsibility, not the control of these people, but the responsibility of marching these people to war, basically. Like, because now she thinks she's going to do Marine, she thinks, and then take all of those people over to King's Landing. And I think part of the thing where Jorah and Barriss and Selmy are trying to counsel her is that, you have to feed these people, and you have to, you know what I mean? So I think that it's that. It's just like, I don't think that she's thinking this with her head. She's thinking with her heart,
Yeah, she's gone very quickly from like a little girl basically to a queen basically, and it's like she's very naive still.
Yeah, very much
Yes,
so.
very, very naive.
So Grey Worm and Daario have been at this little contest of theirs, like having their arms outstretched before them, holding up their swords across the palms of their hands since midnight, we learn. And the winner is the one who, lasts the longest, and he has the pleasure of riding alongside her in the caravan to Marine. And she's like, yeah, no, that is for Selmy and Sir Jorah, because they were where I needed them to be instead of playing these silly games. And she says the last man holding his sword will find another queen to serve. And they both drop at the same time.
Yeah. Right.
And then Missandei kind of gives Grey Worm a little look and walks off. And then Daario teases Grey Worm about that, like maybe having a thing for Missandei. And Grey Worm tells him, "You're not that smart." What do you think that was about?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I thought that scene was actually kind of unnecessary, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of like the comedic relief kind of the episode.
Okay. So I will... That's good to know.
I did like that they said Dario's name like 3 times. So
He
you're like,
did. I did notice that. They're like,
yeah,
hey, remember Dario from last season?
Right,
yeah.
who we recast, so we're just going to keep
Yeah.
calling him this until you get it. So,
So, yeah, they just kept doing it. So you're like, this is him. This is him now.
okay. Well, then you know what? I'm actually going to wait for another scene before I talk about the recast and like my thoughts on it. So now we're back at King's Landing, and Sansa refuses to eat. Shay's trying to get her to eat. She won't. She won't eat the pigeon pie. Imagine that. Imagine.
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine not wanting to eat pigeon pie.
I was hoping I heard that wrong, but you're saying pigeon pie, so it must have been pigeon
Oh,
pie.
it was pigeon pie. And she says, well, we also have lemon cakes. Those are your favorite. And Sansa still won't eat. And then Tyrion comes up and he asks to be alone with his wife. Shay takes way too long to fucking leave. I was just like, oh, Shay.
Yeah, she's just really annoying in this episode.
Oh my
throughout.
God. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
really bad.
So Tyrion tries to talk to her, saying, you know, it's my job to protect you, and I can't do that. Like, I need you healthy. You need to eat. And then she basically talks about how all she can do is think about, she lies awake at night thinking about what they did to her brother and her mother, and not just the fact that they were murdered, but she knows that they took Rob's head off and sewed Grey Wind's head to his body, and that they slit her mother's throat and then dumped her in the sea, naked into the sea.
Yeah, they slit her throat to the bone, and I was like, what? Oh, that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Somehow that makes it worse.
Yeah.
I love this scene though. I love Tyrion in this scene where he seems like he genuinely cares for her, like her well-being at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Sansa, I forget the actress's name, but I feel like she's
Sophie
gotten a
Turner,
lot better.
I think.
Yeah, Sophie Turner. She's gotten a lot better, I think.
Yeah.
She used to feel more forced, and now she seems like in this scene especially, she felt very smooth and very natural.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And then I didn't point out too that another thing of note is that when he first tries to talk to her, Tyrion takes her hand. He places his hand on hers, and Shay turns around and sees that before she walks off and doesn't like it. She doesn't I know, fuck her. She doesn't see the part where Sansa like snatches her hand back. Yeah. So the next scene is so here's the thing about Shay. I remember, I might have said this before, I felt like the Shay on the show was a lot more likable than the Shay in the books. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out why they were making her so likable. I remember feeling like when I read the books, like I didn't know if her feelings for him were sincere, if she was like in it for the money, you know. But in the show, it was like she just seemed like this really great person. Like she was a whore, sure, but she loved Tyrion.
Right.
This scene, this is the Shay I remember from the books. This whole fucking scene, I want to slap her in the face.
I haven't read the books, obviously, and so I don't know what's coming. But from this episode, I feel like up to this point, we're supposed to like her because we're supposed to like Tyrion. Mm-hmm. And so when she was with him, we're supposed to like her, and that was the point of her being a likable person. And now I feel like she's becoming an unlikable person, so that now she can be killed and we won't care.
She's becoming a pain
or
in
she
the
can
ass.
she can do something awful.
Yeah, she can do something awful. She's being a pain in the ass, and I really liked her at the end of last season, especially when she's confronted and she's offered all those jewels, and she's like, "Look, I love Sansa. I would die for that girl.
Yeah,
like this is not about Sansa." And I really sort of appreciated that. But this whole episode, I was like, she's either going to get him killed, or just cause a bunch of fucking shit to roll downhill fast.
Okay, well, I'm glad you brought that up. So she
better not let him die. That better not happen.
That's an interesting observation you just made, John.
That's only a spoiler.
Don't worry. Maybe I'm just being a bitch. You don't know. See, that's the fun of it. It's the fun. I can just fuck with you guys' emotion. You don't even know if I'm doing it or not. No, but seriously, on a serious note, I do agree with you. I do feel like, without giving anything away, that I feel, and I said this, and we weren't podcasting last season. I think I might have written this into the Bald Move guys. But they were talking about the whole scene where Varys goes to her with these jewels and tries to buy her off. And she thinks that Tyrion sent him. And remember, she said something like, if he wants me to go, he can tell me himself. And Varys is like, he don't know, So in this scene, she's in his bed, and he's like, listen, this is not good. Like, the wedding's about to happen. I got the Martell guy here, possibly trying to kill every Lannister he sees, my wife,
No boom boom.
yeah,
No boom boom.
no boom boom. My wife is upset because her family was just slaughtered by my family. Like, this is not good. And she's like, do you love her? And he's like, no, I don't love her. And she wants to have sex. And imagine that. He can't get a hard on because he's got shit on his mind, lady. Like, and then she starts raising her voice. And I was just like, oh my God, you're trying to get people killed. And
Yep.
I hated this whole stuff fucking scene. So she leaves. And when she leaves, I was taking notes or I was tweeting or something. And I didn't see that there was a woman outside the door who saw her leave. And Heather tweeted and was like, who's that woman? Am I supposed to remember who she is? And I was like, did a woman see her leave? And she goes, yeah. And I says, I don't know who it was, but I don't know, because I didn't see the face. So I couldn't tell if it was somebody we were supposed to know who it was before or whatever. But I was like, oh, fuck, someone saw her leave. This can't be good.
Yeah.
She's a bitch. Okay, so then the next scene is Meister Qyburn. And he is the one who was sent back to King's Landing with Jaime. Roose Bolton sent him back after, Jaime's hand was cut off. And I don't know if you guys remember, but he was stripped of his chains because his Meister chains because he was caught doing basically Frankenstein type
Right.
experiments on living people. So he's now at the, taking on the role of being a Meister at the Capitol, and he's fitting Jaime for this golden hand. And Cersei's there drinking her wine. And after he leaves, Jaime tries to cozy up to Cersei. He brings up the fact that she's drinking a lot, and she lists all the reasons why she drinks more than Olivia Pope. She drinks more wine than Olivia Pope, and that's saying something. But she also kind of turns down his sexual advances, and she blames him for getting captured. And he says, I murdered people to get back to you. And she says, I'm saying it's too late. You took too long.
I can't believe that she doesn't want to bang her brother anymore. Come on.
But he looks genuinely crushed. He's like, what are you saying? It was a high school breakup. You can't mean this. Promise in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's he did do those things. A lot of the stuff he did was to get back to her.
Oh yeah, he murdered his own cousin in the cell before, remember? Yeah.
Yeah, and so and so he's like, I came back for you, and now she's like, I'm done with you now.
In this scene, she talks about because Qyburn says, I hope everything's working out for you, whatever. And she goes, yeah, it's fine. The symptoms are gone or whatever. And he leaves, and Jaime points out, I can't believe you let that man touch you. You never let Pycelle, touch you. What symptoms? What's wrong with you? And she doesn't tell him. What do you think it is? Why is she being treated?
I actually didn't catch that part.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I was staring at Jaime. Okay, his haircut looks really good.
Yeah. She's being treated for a frozen heart.
Okay, well, that was my next question. Why do you think she's being so cold towards him?
Do you think it's menopause?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Maybe that's why she's not sexual and she's having hot flashes and she's drinking all the damn time.
It could be.
Do you drink all the time during menopause?
Well, remember, the Queen of Thorns was not really wanting her to marry her Loras because she was she's old. And right. I know what happens to women around this age. It's not pretty.
She called Cersei dried up.
Yes, she did. So when Cersei is talking about all the reasons why she drinks so much, why life is so awful, she talks about the fact that her son is being married off to this bitch from High Garden, and she has to marry a renowned pillow biter.
I can't believe they said pillow biter.
Why? It's Game of Thrones.
I don't know. Not that I wasn't offended by just the term itself. I can't believe it that.
Oh, that it was
cheesy kind of term for somebody that's gay.
And she said, and then Jaime pegged his pants.
Well, what's funny is that remember in last season, his own grandmother called him a sword swallower.
Oh my God, that's right. So I guess why was I surprised?
That's what she asked Tywin. You've never, not even once? And he was like, no. Yeah, I'm telling you, those the Dornish and those up at High Garden, they are very sexually experimental, I guess.
I like that they got married because Cersei had to end the rumors about her, those nasty rumors about her.
And she didn't marry him yet. She hasn't married him.
That's why Tywin wanted her.
Yeah.
And I like that because it was all about her, and there were rumors about him, as we know, but those aren't a big deal. I like that.
Oh yeah. They don't care.
In this scene too, I liked where Jaime was like, a hook would be more practical, and I feel like that's how I feel like Jaime would have. That's how Jaime's changed. I think like the old Jaime would have been like, yeah, gold hand is awesome. Now like the new Jaime, I feel like is more practical. He's like, yeah, a hook would have been better. I don't have to look good.
This is funny because I did think that God, modern medicine is awesome because that fucking golden hand did not look practical or attractive or like, I think I would rather walk around with a stump, to be honest with you.
I think somebody on Twitter last night, it might even been Callie, said something like, don't they know, they learned from Merle? They should put a sword on the end of that thing. Like,
I did see that tweet. Okay, so then the next scene is the wildlings that are already south of the wall, the ones that were with Jon. So it's Tormund Giantsbane, Ygritte, and some other wildlings, and they're at their camp. And they're talking about the fact that, Tormund kind of calls her out on the fact that she refers to Jon in the present tense. Like, she goes, and he says, shouldn't it be he was? Because you said you put 3 arrows in him, and he should be dead because I've seen you like shoot a rabbit straight between the eyes from like 50 paces. And if you put 3 arrows in him and he's not dead, it's because you didn't want him dead. And
she really needs to join the Hunger Games. Is what she needs.
And so they talk about the fact that they're waiting. They're waiting for Mance's signal. If you remember, he was gathering up some more of the free folk, and he has the giants with him now. And they are going to approach the wall. They're going to go from the wall over from the north end. And he's going to light the biggest fire the north has ever seen. And so they have to wait for that signal before they can make a move. And then they are approached by the Thenns. The Thenns are free folk, from the other side of the wall.
They're from Finland.
They're from Terminus, apparently.
Yeah, that's true.
Walking Dead fans will get that. But they're not really friendly. And the leader, I think his name is Styr or Styr. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's Styr. He says, yeah, Mance sent them. And he's like, well, what took you guys so long? Because you came from the south. And he goes, yeah, we took a detour. We raided this village. We got something to eat. And we see that it's an arm, a human arm. They put it on the spit of the fire.
Yeah, they were jamming in the background when they're talking. They're like jamming the spit like into the arm. And also when Styr came around the corner, I thought he was a giant.
Oh, really?
He looked huge. Like, he's this massive human being. Like,
yeah.
He was really scary.
Yeah, he is super scary.
And as he approached, he ran his hand through the campfire, and it was really hot.
And it was not that hot.
That's so sexy, guys.
So, so that's really it. That we see now that they got, more reinforcements and more is coming. And I will say that one of the things that people were saying is that I feel like this episode, I remember reading like the episode titles and stuff, and I think there was some news, like we reported on our website, I can't remember who it's going to be, but like a pretty decent director is going to be directing the penultimate episode, I think, which typically is a big deal on Game of Thrones. That's just how they roll. And I think that they call that one the big battle scene. So everybody's like, oh, is it going to be the battle at Castle Black? Like, is Mance finally going to make his move and Ygritte and all this stuff? What's going to happen? And I remember thinking, well, why would that take like 9 fucking episodes? But now I see that could very well be it, because they're sitting there, because I felt like when the season ended and Jon came wounded into Castle Black and he's like, they're coming and we have to be ready and all this stuff. Now it's kind of like, well, where the fuck are they? Like, I feel like, so we'll get to that with Jon's scene, but I was wondering if they're even going to believe him because nobody's attacking. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. And then I forgot.
Yeah. They move slower than winter.
Basically. And the other thing I wanted to ask, when he said, how did you find us? And the main guy, the main Thenn, he starts sniffing and he turns and there's a bird on one of the Thenn's shoulder and it flies off. Was that a warg?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't, honestly, I'm not asking like because I know and I'm testing. I honestly could not remember from the book if they have wargs and the Thenn's people are wargs. Like Bran and them are,
right.
So
I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. Just when because he started sniffing, and I thought he was going to say because you wildlings stink or something, but he looked over at this bird and it flew off. Okay, so now we're at Castle Black. In my notes, I'm like, Jon Snow is still fine as fuck. And he's getting dressed, and we know this is obviously not the first time he's found out about the Red Wedding. He's obviously known already, but this is our first time seeing some of his reaction to it, right? And he's talking about the last time he saw Robb and how he was always jealous of Robb and how much better Robb was at everything, and how, Ned used to look at him and he wished that his father, their father had looked at him like that. And he goes, and I wanted to hate him, but I never could. And Sam points out, like, he basically feels the same way about Jon.
Yeah, I love that. I love that Sam said that, because it gives Jon Snow some perspective.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So then Jon attends, like, this hearing of sorts, and he has to talk about, like, everything he did. Like, he killed Half Hand. And he tells him, but he wanted me to. Like, he set it up because he knew that if I killed him, I could get in with the wildlings. And that's exactly what happened. And he tells him that there are already some over the wall. They're going to attack from the south. Mance is going to attack from the north. And he has like 100,000 free folk with him. And he's being questioned by Alistair Thorne, who we remember never liked Jon to begin with. And Janis Slynt. Do you guys remember him? The guy on the far left.
No, I don't.
Okay. So remember last season? No, maybe it was season 2. Fuck. Okay, what was the season where Joffrey had all the bastards killed? Like at the end of the season premiere. I think it was season 2. He had all of Robert's bastards killed, including the baby in the brothel. Yeah, okay. So he was the head of the City Watch. And then remember Tyrion invited him to dinner and was talking to him, and he was basically like accusing, like, how could you go murder babies because Joffrey told you to? And he said, are you questioning my honor? And Tyrion was like, I'm not questioning it, I'm denying its existence.
Oh, okay, I do remember that.
Okay, that he used to be the head of the City Watch, and he had him sent to the Wall. So that's who that is. So there, and then there's Maester Aemon, who's the blind Targaryen. And they basically want to punish him because he admitted to lying with a girl, which they're not supposed to do because he took the black. And Maester Aemon is like, we don't have time for this. If this is true, we have to get ready. And they're like, he may very well have to be punished, but it's not going to be today.
Right.
I love Jon Snow in this. I mean, he was very similar, like I said, to Jamie earlier, and I felt like he basically dropped the mic after he was finished. Yeah, he was like, I told you everything. That's the truth. I'm done. Do what you want.
Deal with it.
I've been riddled with arrows, so you can't do anything to me now.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
And I do like that this is a new Jon Snow, because I do feel like you said before, he was really he's a good person, and we see that being a good person in this universe is probably the surefire way to get you killed. So you don't have to give up your beliefs. That doesn't mean you be a horrible person, but you have to be a bit smarter about how you play the game and be decisive. And I feel like this is a turning point for him, where he's, like you said, he's been through some shit.
You have to be like Ned Stark a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But more like the Ned that wouldn't have got his head cut off. Less like that type of Ned, but
not the Ned that goes and tells Cersei exactly what his plan is.
Yes, and give her a head start to pack her bags and turn the city against you. No, not that Ned. So the next scene is back at King's Landing, and Marjorie and her grandmother, Lady Olenna, are looking over jewelry. And the grandmother's being super picky, and Marjorie's like, listen, the wedding's in 2 weeks. It's in a fortnight. We need to pick something. And they're left alone when Brienne arrives. And I love the fact that the Queen of Thorns was so, you would think because of her station and she's such a lady and she's obviously particular about her jewels, that she would probably not like someone like Brienne, but she loved her.
She was, enamored with her. She was like, oh, we are Jewish. You're masterful.
Yes.
I felt like, too, though, she was being nice, too. I mean, it was it wasn't like that she was actually feeling that way about her, but it was like, you could probably tell that she was Brienne was expecting a certain response. So when you give her the other response, and that you get her on your side immediately.
Yeah. I think that I think that that's part of, like we talked about earlier, I think that she's definitely very tolerant. You know what I mean? And I think that she puts she definitely thinks that women are smarter than men anyway. Do you know what I mean? And so I think she's tolerant. She doesn't mind that her grandson's gay. She knows that her, granddaughter is marrying this asshole, but she's going to be queen. I think that I felt like that was like a genuine respect for Brienne.
I also liked in the scene before Brienne arrives, Marjorie makes some comment about like she just let Joffrey pick the necklace and it'll be a bunch of birds' heads
yes.
around. but she says she's like, don't even be careful with that. Even with me, even around here with me, you can't be talking shit about the king.
Watch that, even here, even with me. And when she delivered that line, it actually reminded me of my grandmother. It's just something about this woman. Like she seems real. Do you know what I mean? Like I love her, and I loved how she was just like, yeah, we both know he's a little psychopath, but be careful.
It's a great character.
Yeah,
it's a great character.
Very great. She's appropriately cast too. She's doing a great job. So Brienne wants to talk to Marjorie alone, and she explains to her how Renly died, that it was a smoke, like a shadow with Stannis' face, and it stabbed him and then disappeared. And she's apologetic, because her husband died, and she wants to, I didn't do it. Catelyn Stark didn't do it. This is what it was, and I want you to know, like, I failed him. I was supposed to protect him. Marjorie is studying that. Marjorie is like, look, Marjorie is where Marjorie wants to be. Marjorie, and back in season 2, she said she wanted to be the queen. And if the only reason she cared about Renly is because she thought he was going to win. Now she is going to be the queen. And she basically tells Brienne in a very nice way, girl, don't worry about it.
Like, girl, I'm not even mad at you.
Right.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. And then they walk past this statue, and I said on Twitter, it's a statue of Joffrey, and I was like, that statue is fucking ridiculous. Did you see that?
And it's a statue of him, like there's a direwolf at his feet with an arrow in it.
Is it? I didn't notice that part. I just noticed
it felt very much like something Joffrey would do.
Oh yeah, and the statue
it fits so well.
The statue is standing like a douchebag, and it immediately fades in.
It's standing like a total douchebag, yeah.
And then it immediately fades into the scene where he is standing exactly like the statue. Right. I was like, is he posing for another one? Like, what is he doing?
It's so funny that that scene in particular, like I feel like that's the tale they will tell about Joffrey is that not did Arya Stark in season 1 like get him down and a direwolf bit him and all of that. He killed the direwolf with the thing. It's part of his legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, the history is written by the winners. Is what it is.
Absolutely.
But I feel like he was like that statue was too small. Like, and so he is posing for a new one, so they can make a bigger
one. So he's meeting with oh god, is this guy's name Sir Manton or Sir Marin? I will be appropriately prepared next week. This guy I could not.
Shit, it was appropriately. You've known like 87 names. In the
I had the cast page up last night, Nina.
I had to listen. I feel like as the moderator, it is my job to like know the shit.
I'm like the one with the dragons, the guy with the long hair.
I describe them by beards. Like not the guy with the twirly beard guy.
Sir Roderick.
Not the guy with the big beard.
Oh, not the guy with the braided beard. Not Sir Roderick.
Right. The guy whose name is Littlefinger, not the guy who has little fingers.
Little fingers. Okay, but this guy, he's the one who I thought was the one who tried to kill Tyrion during the Battle of Blackwater, and Podrick killed him. I always thought it was this guy, but apparently it's not. And I will promise you guys, I'm so sorry, I will know his name next week. But he is, the one that basically will slap around Sansa if Joffrey says to do. He's just the asshole. But anyway, so he's going over with Jaime. Jaime's going over like the security detail of the Kingsguard, particularly when because the wedding's coming up, and he's going to protect. He's going to be. Jaime says he's going to be assigned to Joffrey, and this guy's like, I'm always assigned to the king. And Joffrey steps in, and he's like, yeah, like how can you protect me like with one hand? And he's just being a little shit. And Joffrey starts flipping through this book, which has all of like the achievements of the past members of the Kingsguard or current members of the Kingsguard, and he's like flipping through it and naming all these guys and like how they have like 4 paragraphs or 4 pages, and Jaime has like half a page, and he's like, and Jaime says, well, I still have time or something, and he goes, really, 40-year-old Kingsguard with one hand?
Such a little dickhead.
I fucking hate him so much.
I'm glad that he is still well on his way to turning everyone against him.
Yes.
like everyone important in his life.
I don't want to see any growth in that character at all.
So I was listening to, I think it was Ball Move's Instacast on this episode. And so Aaron has read the books, Jim has not. And I think Aaron asked him about, Joffrey's behavior in the scene. And they both seem of the mind that Joffrey does not know that Jaime is his father. And I completely disagree. And this isn't like book knowledge or anything like that. This is just based off of these episodes. I feel like in that season 2 premiere, when he was having the throne room redone, and this is right before the bastards were killed, and he said what people are saying about you and Uncle Jaime. Because Stannis sent out fucking letters to everybody, remember? Stannis sent out letters to everybody saying,
right.
This is why I'm trying to take the throne, because that little guy, that little bastard, he's a product of incest. So apparently, Joffrey not just heard that people are saying that his mother fucked her brother, but that he's the father of all 3 of her blonde-headed kids. So I think that he was being like this not because he didn't know that Jaime is his father, but that he truly you know what I mean? And he's angry. Like, that's what I took this as. So what do you guys, do you think that Joffrey knows?
Yeah, I think outside of whether or not he knows, and I think he does know, but I think outside of that, I think he's just doing everything Joffrey does is because Joffrey's a little shit, like you said. So I don't think it has anything. I don't think it has anything to do with him being his father or not knowing anything. He's just gonna act this way all the time.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely a little bit more respectful before he became king. Like, he seemed to really look up to his Uncle Jaime, and now it just seems like between being the king, being a natural born asshole, and knowing that this guy is his father, like, I think he's getting off on being able to treat his father like this
I totally agree.
Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so then...
And without any spoilers, and you don't have to answer this at all, Nina, but I just want to say, I can't wait for him to die, so I hope that he does. So you don't have to say
anything. We can't wait for him to die.
Duly noted. Listen, I've read the books and I've always said, I really want this kid to die. I hope he gets ass banged to death by a direwolf. Like, that would be the appropriate way. So, fingers crossed. So now we're back with Daenerys, and they are coming upon Meereen, and Daenerys is talking to Missandei about like this city and how it is this huge slave city, and it's not going to be the same as taking over Astapor or Yunkai. And Daario interrupts the conversation to talk strategy. And I love that Missandei kind of gives him a look like, motherfucker, you ain't slick. Like, okay, I'll be over here, your grace, And basically he starts presenting her with these different flowers, and he's saying, this is strategy. Like, these are the local flowers, so you must know a land if you're going to rule it. So you need to know the land and the flowers and the this and the that. And she was at first kind of like shooting him down, but at the end of it, she was kind of grinning. Oh.
See, and I'm not here for this. Honestly, I don't want Daenerys to be wooed by anyone. I just want her to be the mother of dragons. That's what I want her to be.
I want to ship the old Daario.
Thank you. Okay, here's the thing.
And also, where the hell were their fucking rose bushes? They're like walking through a desert.
Yeah, and he found like this bright blue rose, and and ladies' lace and all this other stuff. Okay, so I like the old Daario because I mean, he was not okay until he smiled. He was handsome. Then he smiled. He had a little snaggletooth going on, but hey, I have a gap in my front teeth. I have an overbite. I'm cool with it. I was like, you know what? It brings a certain level of charm. I'm okay with this. But the reason that I liked him for Daario, and I think you saw it in the end of last season, was in the books, Daario has like, I'm probably going to get this wrong. Natasha from Unspoiled would know better than I, but I think in the books, his beard is purple, and it's like 3 braids, and it has beads on the end of it. And he dresses in like with eye makeup.
He's a badass.
Yes. He's like, in the books, he's so like flamboyant, I guess you can say. And so...
And he says dude a lot.
Yeah.
But it feels like in the books, you are, I will just say, and this is not spoilers going ahead, but from where we are in the show, what you've seen of Dario here and at the end of last season, at this point in the books, you can see that it's working. Like remember last season when they took young Kai and they all came back and fucking Jorah walked in and what did she say? Where's Dario Naharis?
Where's Dario?
Yeah. So apparently this shit is working on her. I feel like the other actor, I think you would get the same feeling because in the books you're like, Daenerys, girl, focus. Like, you're like John's reaction. It's like, I'm not here for this. I don't want you falling for this shit. You got to focus and get your ass over to King's Landing. You got these dragons,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this guy, I feel like is almost too normal where now he's wooing her and I feel like people would be like, oh, this is okay. Where, do you know what I mean? Like the other guy, he had that thing that where you felt like, no, girl, what are you thinking?
Yeah, like he just killed his other two,
Yeah. This guy had the right amount of smarminess and, like I felt like he was more in line.
He seemed a little bit more savage. And I use that in the best possible way. Like I hate calling people savages.
I think that if he did have like the purple beard and the braids and stuff in the beard, I think that would at least make a little bit more sense because it would be kind of similar to Khal Drogo. It would kind of remind her of him and stuff like that. But I mean, it's like,
she has a type.
Now, yeah, but she does have a type. but I would think that would make more sense. I still wouldn't like it because I don't want her. I don't want any romantic relationship. But
I feel like they're going to miss out now because this guy is so clean cut looking, and so do you know what I mean? He doesn't even really seem as smarmy as the other guy. So now I feel like it's more romantic, and like people who haven't read the books are probably going to be like, "Oh, it's okay." Whereas the rest of us, when we read the books, we were just like, "Girl, no." Like,
right. It really reminded me like the new guy that's playing Dario. Reminded me of almost like a Lancelot thing, like where you can see why, Gwendoline fell in love with Lancelot.
Right.
Of course she.
Exactly. And part of Dario's the feeling that you get from the book is, girl, what are you thinking? Okay, so then they come across a crucified slave, and it's a little girl. And she's been posed in such a way that she's literally pointing the way to Meereen. And Ser Jorah points out that there are one of these at every mile marker between this point and Meereen. And she asks, how many miles away are they? And I believe he says 163 miles. And he wants to have some of their guys ride ahead and start burying them before they get there so she doesn't have to see it. And she goes, no, I will look into the faces of all of them. Bury her, but take off her collar, her slave collar, before you do.
And this is the Daenerys that I like. This is the Daenerys that I want. This is the Daenerys I'm here for. Mm-hmm. This is the point in the episode where I was like, oh, Daenerys is my favorite character. Because I loved that. I loved that she said that.
Yeah.
And another thing, I was impressed that they have mile markers. I mean, that seems very advanced.
True. So, then we're with Jaime and Brienne, and they're watching Sansa from afar and at King's Landing, and Brienne reminds him of his promise to Catelyn, and he's like, look, Caitlyn's dead, Arya's probably dead, how can I keep my promise? Now Sansa's my sister-in-law, she's at King's Landing, like, she's safe, I can't do any better than this. And she says, look me in the eye and tell me you really think she's safe here. And he's just like, she's my sister-in-law, what am I supposed to do, kidnap her and take her where? And,
where would she be more safe than she is here?
Yes. And she says, he says to her, are you sure we're not related? Because since I've been back, every Lannister has like basically been a straight up asshole to him. And he's like, is it something like, what is it? So
they've been a miserable pain in my ass.
Yeah.
I love that because that's Jaime now.
Yeah.
That's
Talk
Jaime
to the hand.
Yes. So, Sansa's walking back to, I guess, the castle, and she feels like there's somebody like following her, and she starts walking faster, and she sees that it's Ser Dantas, who is the guy who on Joffrey's name day back in season 2 was gonna fight in the tournament for Joffrey's name day and showed up drunk. And Joffrey was going to have him killed by making him just drink barrels of wine. And Sansa convinced him that it's bad luck to kill somebody on your name day. So he became like the castle fool instead. And so he thanks Sansa for saving his life and gives her a necklace that belonged to his mother. And at first she's not going to take it, but eventually she takes it and she promises to wear it with pride. Any
I love
thoughts
this.
on that?
I love that the Starks lost a sword and they gained a necklace. That's kind of like that's an heirloom. They lost the heirloom they had before, and now they gained a new one.
Okay, Ned lost a son and he gained a son-in-law in Tyrion. Just look on the bright side. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and he's a good son-in-law. He's Tyrion. He's good.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love what Marjorie told her last season. Like, he's not the worst Lannister there is. You could be marrying this little shit that I have to marry. Okay, so the final scene of the episode, the final story in the episode, is Aria. She's riding with the Hound. They're sharing a horse. She wants her own horse, and he says he's taking her to the Vale, to her aunt Lyssa, and the Eyrie to sell her, basically. And he's like, and maybe if she has some money left over after she pays me for you, she can buy you a pony. And she doesn't want to ride on the horse with him because he basically smells like how you would imagine the Hound would smell, I guess. So they stop and there's a tavern and she wants to go inside, but he counts the number of horses outside. And he's like, that's 5 guys inside and I'm hungry. And she sees 2 of the guys come out to take a leak.
The 5 guys is more than I want to kill on an empty stomach.
Right. So these 2 guys come out to take a piss, and she realized that one of them is Polliver. He's one of the guys that captured her and her friends. What's his name? What was his name? So what was the pie guy name? Hot Pie.
Hot Pie.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Hot Pocket.
yes. Now I got to put that picture that we did last year in this show notes. So yeah, he was part of the group that came and killed the guy that was taking them to Castle Black and took them to Harrenhal and took her sword Needle. And the Hound makes fun of her for naming her sword. He's only cunts name their sword.
She's like, yeah, lots of people name their swords. He's like, yeah, lots of cunts. That was like one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Yes.
And
then she says,
he doesn't care. He's another guy that doesn't care what he says anymore. He's like, I'll say what I want.
Fuck.
I love it. He's like, of course you named your sword. Like, you would do something like that.
Yes. Especially then when like
your pony.
Yeah. So then, and then she points out that he killed Lolly, and he goes, "What the fuck's a lolly?" Alami. Yeah, what the fuck's a lami? Oh my god, it was so funny. She's like, he was my friend. So she sees that he actually still has Needle. Polliver does, and she starts marching off, pulling a Carl from The Walking Dead. But I loved it because she was like swinging her, like marching, literally. Her arms are swinging.
She's like, I'm going to get that goddamn sword back.
Yes. She gave 0 fucks, and I loved it. And he's like, and I loved it because he didn't even see her leave at first, remember? He like looked over to say something to her. She was already gone, and the look on his face.
He's like, back here.
Oh, shit.
Yes. The look on his face is kind of like in the season finale when he was like, where'd you get the knife? And she holds it up, and he looks down at his belt, and he's like, oh, damn it. Like, give me that. So he goes to like pull her away, but the commotion has caused like one of the guys to open the door. So now they kind of have to go in, and the guys are inside and they're being assholes and they're like manhandling like one of the waitress or whatever. And they sit down and Polliver comes over and he starts talking to the Hound and Aria. There's one part that I kind of didn't like, and it's probably my only complaint of the episode, and it's super small, is that when he looks over and he goes, "Hey, I know you," and then they play like this foreboding music, and Arya kind of reaches for the sword, and he goes, "You're the Hound," and then the music stops immediately, and it felt very comical. Do you know what I mean? It just felt out of place in this drama.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
I did love though that Arya does instinctively grab the sword. Like instead of it's the Hound, it's her.
Yeah.
She grabs the sword instead of him.
Yeah.
So I loved that it was her.
Yeah, I love that scene. I just didn't like the music that accompanied it. It felt very Laurel and Hardy, like it just felt out of place. But so he goes over and he sits down, and basically he is being an asshole, and the Hound wants one of their chickens, and he doesn't want to pay for it because he doesn't have any money. And he goes, "You talk a lot." And he goes, "Listen, listening to you talk makes me thirsty." And he drinks the guy's beer. And basically, he's like, he goes, he goes, something, you used to live for the queen and now you're going to die for a chicken. Oh my God. And the whole time I'm like, why is he fucking with the Hound? Why? You know his brother. Like, yes. He even said, like, and that's part of the thing that I don't know if people really got it with what's going on in the realm is like, now that the war is somewhat over, the Lannisters have these guys out there raiding these villages, stealing their food and their money, and just, because they're in debt, they owe the Bank of Bravos money. And the mountains out there fucking shit up. And he's like, yeah, he rolls with his brother. And he's like, it's torture this and torture that, And I'm like, why are you fucking with him? This is not the guy you fuck with.
and the conversation was actually kind of going well, and not badly at least, until he was like, hey, the king is great and all that. And then the Hound's like, fuck the king. Like his new favorite catchphrase.
That was the turning point right there.
Yeah. And he was just like, well, I serve the king now. Yeah, I serve the king now. So there's a big brawl. And the Hound fucks shit up. He violently slams this guy's face down on a knife 3 times, and he
really proved that you don't fuck with the Hound. That's
why. You really, really don't. And then while this is all going on, Aria manages to take a sword and she cuts Polliver across the back of his leg, and when he falls down, she takes her needle from him and she repeats what he said to Lami before he killed him. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because you can see, he didn't know her. He still didn't recognize her because he tortures and kills and raids so many people, so many little kids, so many little girls. Yeah. And it's
and it wasn't until she said, maybe I'll pick my teeth with it. Then you could see it, it sunk in who she was.
And right at that moment, she was like, stab, and he's dead.
Yeah.
And her face was stone cold.
Oh, yeah, when she took the other sword, there's one guy that was laying there. She killed another guy, too. Remember, she slid it in?
Yeah.
And then pulled it out, and then she cut him across the back of the leg. So I was like, holy fuck, Aria. So
this is the Hound rubbing off on her here.
Yeah, and so the episode ends with the two of them riding off, and now she has her own horse, and he has his chicken, and you can see there's a really great shot of the the landscape before them, and you see buildings burning, and it's not a good time in the realm right now. But that's how the episode ends.
They are the you don't fuck with them crew. That's what
yes, they're the not fucking around crew.
They're not fucking around.
Whose horse we taking? Whose horse we taking?
So
what's funny is I sort of totally kind of unrelated, but last week I was reading this article that said that one of the more common baby names of the last few years that's risen in the ranks as Aria. A lot of people are naming their baby Aria, and after watching that scene, I was like, Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I would do that.
I would. That's exactly what you want right there.
Yeah, she seems to be the only Stark who is she's doing a lot better than the rest of them. Okay,
although now, Jon Snow is working his way up.
Yeah. So I'm just going to reward the tweet of the week. I want to remind everybody that every Sunday night I live tweet this episode via my personal account and Project Fandom. So if you follow us on Twitter at Project Fandom or at ProFanMan, use the hashtag PFGOT and join the conversation. And if you get tweet of the week, at the end of the season, everybody who's won tweet of the week, their name is put into a hat. Or actually a website, and it'll spit out one name in that person. Whatever.
It's 2014.
Yeah, in a website, and it'll randomly pick one to win a Game of Thrones T-shirt from our Zazzle store. So we did that for The Walking Dead. Congratulations to Shalita who won the great Walking Dead T-shirt that John designed specifically for the finale. It's pretty cool. And it's oddly enough, Shalita gets the tweet of the week for Game of Thrones. So you're already in the running for Game of Thrones t-shirt, Shalita. Her tweet last night, Cersei and that wine, that's her true love. Yeah, I think the only thing that Cersei loves more than herself would be wine. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, she's too busy making love to that bottle than
They,
she is to have anything with Jamie.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to come right back and read our feedback and wrap this episode up. But first, we're going to take a quick break. Hey guys, did you know that you can support our website and our podcast just by shopping at Amazon? Go to projectfandom.com/Amazon and we will receive a small portion of your total order. It doesn't cost you anything extra. We get that little bit from Amazon's profits. Pretty cool, huh? Super easy, and it's a great way to support us, help us keep the podcast going, and help us do all the fun, crazy contests that we come up with. So if you like the podcast, you like the website, consider using our affiliate link for your shopping needs. Again, that's projectfandom.com/Amazon. Now back to the show. Okay, so we're back. Before I jump into the little bit of feedback we got for this episode, I do want to read iTunes reviews that we got. Just so you know, this podcast is available on iTunes and on Stitcher. We would really appreciate it if you could just take 2 minutes to go leave us a 5-star review. We put out 4 episodes a week on this podcast. We cover Game of Thrones, The Following, Resurrection, and Scandal. So make sure you list in your review which podcast or podcasts that you listen to so that I know to give you your shout out on the appropriate show. So with this one, I think I read this on the Walking Dead podcast, but I'm going to read it now, as well. The title is Great Content, 5 stars from BBW Raven. I'm always leery of a podcast with multiple shows per week. Sometimes it's like they're forcing it, but I think Nina and her crew do an amazing job of keeping me entertained. The banter is contagious and makes me feel less guilty for watching so much TV. Girl, never feel guilty for watching a lot of TV. Don't let anybody make you feel bad because you watch a lot of TV.
Don't let anybody dull your spark.
Right. No. Sparkle, bitches. Sparkle. So she says, I listened to the following podcast, American Horror Story. Yes, we used to cover that show. And we will be covering it again when it returns in October. I listened to the following podcast, American Horror Story, The Following, Resurrection, Scandal, and we'll listen to Game of Thrones. And I don't want to listen to the other shows for the simple fact I don't want to listen until I start watching those shows. I never planned to watch the second season of The Following, but after listening to the podcast, I was hooked on the show once again. Their commentary sometimes makes the show better than it actually is. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And this other review, the last one I want to read, was actually left like 2 weeks ago, and I somehow didn't read it before, and I feel really bad. It says, this podcast is the bee's knees, 5 stars from T-Sleeve. She says, I listen to the podcast for The Walking Dead and Scandal. I've always wanted to listen to a podcast, but I never have the time. A good friend of mine, shout out to Denise, turned me on to Project Fandom on Facebook a few months ago and suggested I listen to the podcast. As usual, I never had the time. At the beginning of the season of The Walking Dead, I began live tweeting and interacting with the great people at Project Fandom. My friend told me that I had been mentioned in a podcast, one of my Facebook comments. I immediately gave it a listen, and I am now hooked. I love this group. The combination of Nina, John, and Meghan on the Walking Dead podcast and Nina, Katoria, and Margot on the Scandal podcast is entertaining, hilarious, and downright awesome. If you're looking for insight to your favorite show coupled with easy, witty banter, Podcast Fandom is the place to be. Thank you so much. And I agree. We are the place to be. So thank you guys. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. We are the bee's knees.
We are. I said I can cross that off my bucket list. Now I just need somebody to refer to me as the cat's pajamas, and my life will be complete.
Well, all you have to do is go back to the 1920s.
Yeah. Get in my TARDIS, and it'll happen.
And talk to some flappers, and you'll find out.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the Facebook feedback that we got on this episode before I sign off, and I'll be doing the spoiler section all by myself. Okay, so Mrs. Weeks. Why do I always say Mrs.? It's Mrs. Weeks. Just read the recap. Do you think Jamie doesn't know about his kids? I haven't finished the books, but I just assume he knew. I think he knows, right, guys? I think he knows.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's more questionable if he knows than it is if Joffrey knows. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that it's possible Jaime doesn't know, but I think Joffrey definitely knows.
Okay. But I really enjoyed the premiere. Not too much blood, which is the way I like it. It's hard to enjoy a show behind your hands. How the hell do you watch The Walking Dead? I do not like the NuDaario. Why did the hottie with the silver eyes have to leave? Small pout. His game isn't even as tight as the old Dario. See?
Agreed.
Poor Ser Jorah. She's just not that into you, boo. Find someone else. That'll make her come around. I hate Cersei. But then who doesn't? She's the iciest of the Ice Queen. She's moved on from Jaime because he lost a hand. He's still cute. But dude, that's her brother. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but if you go ahead and accept the fact that they were already together, then it makes sense to be like, well, why is she going to break up with him? Come on.
This is, I honestly, yeah, if apparently if that doesn't bother you, he is like the hottest guy in the realm right now, even with one hand.
I did want to mention one thing I forgot to mention. In that scene, when she mentions that, Tywin can't disown you because you're all he has. And I like that Jaime turns around to her and says, you're forgetting about Tyrion. So I like that he didn't forget about his brother.
Oh yeah. And I actually did kind of even like the fact that she didn't scoff at that, which is what I expected her to do. Okay, she says he's still cute. Besides, she's not screwing his hand. At least I hope not. Ew. Oh.
Well, he has a nice
now there's going to be a whole line of Game of Thrones sex toys around this.
A golden hand dildo? Oh, Jesus.
You remove the fist and it becomes a thump.
Oh, I hate you right now. I hate you all. Okay, she goes, I need these Lannisters to get killed quick, fast, and in a hurry. Well, not Tyrion. He's the man. I agree. So Christopher Nicholas says, that was an excellent premiere episode. I'm so happy Game of Thrones is finally back. I loved all of it. My favorite parts of the episode would have to be the introduction of Oberyn Martell and Ilaria Sand. You can tell from the couple of minutes we see them that they're going to be forces to be reckoned with. I love the Tyrion and Sansa scene. Poor Sansa just can't catch a break. I know a lot of people hate Sansa, but I don't get it. I love the fact that she's a survivor, and through all the hell she has endured, like losing her father, asshole Joffrey, and having to marry into the family that basically made her family extinct, well, as far as she knows. She is still alive and still playing the game as best she can. Her scene with Tyrion was heartbreaking and wonderfully acted by both Sophie Turner and Peter Dinklage. And now for Aria. Oh my God, Aria. I knew that her character was going to get dark, but I didn't think this dark. Damn, her innocence is definitely gone for good after that disturbing-ass scene of her exacting her revenge on Polliver for killing Lamy. All the Emmy should go to Maisie Williams for how she delivered those lines and the look on her face as she stuck needles slowly into that poor bastard. Now for the one thing I didn't like about this episode. Uh-oh. And that is Shay. Oh, yeah, fuck Shay. We don't like Shay either.
Yeah, no worries.
It's just because her character annoys the hell out of me. She doesn't seem to understand that her ass is irrelevant, and Tyrion should be focusing on more important things, like watching his back because his sister and nephew are fucking crazy and want his little ass dead. Stupid Shay, always a whore and never a wifey. Shape in my head.
Never a wifey.
Never a wifey.
Never gonna get wifed up.
Oh my God. We need a t-shirt with Shay. I don't know if we want to put the horror on there, but never a wifey would be funny. The Daenerys scenes were fine. I love seeing the dragons and how big they've gotten. You can tell how the budget for the show probably gotten like blockbuster movie big. Who the fuck was that guy with Danny in Grey Room? Was that supposed to be Dario Naharis? Because I'm not here for this guy.
Yes.
Bring back, as Nina calls him, Snaggletooth. Yes! So that's all my feedback for today. I know I didn't mention all the characters, but if I did, I'd be writing all day. Can't wait to hear your podcast. Woohoo!
I completely agree about Maisie Williams. I mean, she is very, like I mentioned, that Sophie Turner has gotten better.
Okay.
And I feel like that's part of what is make her into a more likable character. Her and her involvement with Tyrion, her involvement with his storyline.
Yeah.
But I think that Maisie Williams has always been very good on the show, and I think that her going darker is going to just make her even better.
I agree. And so the final message is from Claire. She actually touched on something and confirmed it that I was going to mention, and I thought it was spoilery, but she confirmed that it's not, so I can go ahead and mention it. But so her first message was, I love this episode. I was completely engaged the whole time and commenting excitedly to no one in particular since I was by myself. First off, Ice Man. Oh, yes, Ice. I thought she was saying Iceman, like from the X-Men. I was like, what? Claire, what are you talking about? Yes, Ice, the sword. This destroyed me in the book and did here as well. To cap it off, when Tywin threw the Stark wolf scabbard into the fire with a look of smug satisfaction, I hated him forever. And I have a hard time hating him because Charles Dance. Agreed. Oberyn, holy shit. Aria, yes, someone wrote that. It was the greatest character introduction in the history of the show, and I agree. Yeah, it was pretty nice. Dragons. Dany should know better than to try to break up a squabble between dogs. I mean, dragons and food. That's what you guys said.
Yep.
They will bite you. I love the NuDaario. He can actually act, and I think there's chemistry between them. I don't know, Claire. I don't know if I can follow you down that road. Isn't Grey Worm, this is what I was going to mention before, isn't Grey Worm Missandei's brother? I think you tweeted that last night. So when she gave him that look, like, will you stop fucking around? I thought it was a very sibling, like, I was surprised that people took it to be romantic, like, you know, because they're eunuchs. So he can't do nothing. Right?
And as the NuDaario mentions, like, I would rather have no brains than no balls.
Right. And so when because before that, when he kind of accuses him of like flirting with her or whatever, he says, Grey Worm says to him, "You're not that smart." And I thought that was him saying, like, you don't get it. That's my sister. So I just thought that was her brother. I really did. I thought I read that in the books, but so we'll get to that. So I did tweet that last night. Jon Snow seems to have shed his whiny emo persona and is more direct and honey badgerish. Jon Snow don't give a fuck. And, yes, and much more attractive. Arya likes to see the life go out of men's eyes when she kills them a little. Too much? Anyone notice that? Well, you noted that when Melisandre met her last season, and she says, I see eyes. I see green eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes that you'll close forever. So I agree. I think Arya does. Yeah, she has a little bloodlust. Can't wait for your podcast. Can't wait for next Sunday. This show is so good. And then she came back and said, okay, I checked the wiki. Missandei has two brothers who are unsullied at this point in the story, but she and Grey Worm are not siblings, at least not in the books, but I think they should be. Smiley face. So yeah, I could have sworn she had unsullied a brother, at least one. And so now I'm wondering if they're just going to make it Grey Worm. You know what I mean? Like, combine characters. So
that would be fine. That's because the fewer romantic crap, the less romantic crap we can get on here, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So,
John ain't down with the romance, folks. He's a bit of a hater, apparently. No, I'm just kidding.
I know I liked Robb Stark and his wife, you know, but then it's like we saw where that went.
Yeah, you just really there's no place for love and romance and honor in the Seven Kingdoms, apparently. So, okay, I'm going to wrap this up. After I close this out and you hear the music, there will be a spoiler section, which is just me talking about some differences in this episode from the books. And also I got an email with a spoiler question that I'm going to address. So if you don't want to hear that, make sure you shut it off after the music. And then, you know, we'll see you next week. But I just want to remind everybody, I'm going to do this really quick. Our website, projectfandom.com, we do next day recaps of TV shows. We cover movies, books, comics, anime, gaming, both tabletop and video games. It's a really cool website. Check us out, projectfandom.com. You can email feedback to projectfandom@gmail.com. If you want to write me, particularly with book spoilers that John and Megan won't see, that I will read on the podcast, send it to Nina at projectfandom.com. That's Nina at projectfandom.com. Come join us on Facebook, facebook.com/projectfandom, and on Twitter at projectfandom and at profamman. That is it. It's been great. I know it's a long podcast. Game of Thrones is awesome. These might be long podcasts for the rest of the season. I'm just going to warn you now. So that's it. If you're not hanging around to the spoiler section, we will see you next week. Say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
See you next week, guys.
Okay, so I am back with the spoiler section. It's just me. Like I said before, John and Megan have not read the books. I have. So I am always down to discuss the differences in the show, than the one, than what happened in the book. So yeah, bring it on. If you want to talk about that stuff with me, please send an email to nina@projectfandom.com, and I will be more than happy to do a short spoiler section diving right in. Okay, so I got one email from Devin, and he said, do you like the approach the show is taking with Tyrion and Shay? I feel like they are telegraphing her betrayal, and I felt reading it, I was totally blindsided. Okay, so I mentioned in the main part of the cast that I did talk about this last season, and I'm almost positive I wrote into Bald Moves podcast to be on their spoiler section. Because of what happened in the finale last season with Shay, when Varys came to her and offered her the jewels, and she thought that it was from Tyrion. And I believe that Varys even told her, no, he doesn't even know I'm doing this, and she didn't believe him. So I did feel like, I don't know if I was blindsided by Shay's betrayal in the books, but I will say that it just, I wasn't blindsided. It just didn't surprise me. Like, I didn't feel like I liked her in the books. I didn't feel like their relationship, I don't think I ever felt like she felt the same way about him that he obviously felt about her. So when she betrayed him in the books, I was just like, of course, she's a whore and a liar. And of course she did this to you. So in the show, I just kept thinking throughout, these past 3 seasons, wow, they are really making her a lot more likable than she was in the books. And I really feel like they are selling the fact that she really cares for Tyrion. And I thought they were doing that because it would make her betrayal for TV watchers who hadn't read the book even more horrible, right? It would have a bigger impact if for 3 seasons you think this woman really, really loves him. So, but then I was worried because it was like, but would it be believable that she would betray him? If all you've shown us is how devoted she is and how she truly, truly loves him, why would she do that to him? And we know it's going to happen. So I couldn't understand that until I saw that scene with Varys. And then I was like, okay, they're going to make it like it's a big misunderstanding. She truly believes that Tyrion is trying to get rid of her. And I think that moment in the finale, I think then makes it so that she's looking for shit that's not there. So when she sees him touch Sansa's hand in last night's episode, she's thinking, oh, of course, he's falling in love. And look how he touches her. She didn't look long enough to see Sansa snatch her hand back. So I think she is now, because what Varys did, I think she has now set herself up to see shit that's not there, to not trust Tyrion, to believe that he really loves Sansa, and it's going to make it easy for her to then betray him, as we know she's going to betray him. So that's what I think. And I'm okay with that. I feel like I like the fact that they actually made me like her in the show, because I think it's more interesting when you have a character that you like and they do something bad than if I've been indifferent towards her for 3 seasons, as I was in the books. I was totally indifferent towards her. So yeah, I'm okay with the way it's going. And yeah, so I don't think I was blindsided in the books. And I still think that people are going to be blindsided. If you haven't read the books and they're just watching the show, I do think people will still be blindsided because they have done such a good job of making you feel like she really, really loves him. So I think that they are going to think that it can't be good. And we forgot to actually talk about this in the main part of the cast. I realized it as I was editing. But the woman that saw her leaving Tyrion's room interrupts Jaime and Cersei's conversation later. So we know she snitches. So I think the casual watcher is probably going to think that it's a combination of her being jealous and Cersei probably, whispering in her ear and threatening her that would make her testify against him, which I think is the first betrayal. And I think that's going to be like, oh, fuck. But I can, I think they'll understand when it happens. But I think her fucking his father, that I don't think anybody's going to be prepared for if they haven't read the books. I think that's going to be like, holy fuck, I did not see that coming. And I think people will still be blindsided in a good way. So, okay, I hope that answered your question. I don't really notice, so I mean there were some book differences, but I didn't take notes on it, so I don't want to just start talking out my ass right now. I will do better for episode 2 to talk about the things that happen in the book that may be different in next week's episode. And it looks like next week we're getting the purple wedding, so yay, that should be great. Okay, that's it for the spoiler section, guys. I will see you next week.